So today I want to show you how to make a great resume. One of the best places to start is talking about the applicant tracking system, or ATS. An applicant tracking system, or an ATS, is the tool that recruiters use to help them filter through the thousands of applicants they might get for a job posting. Now, what an ATS does is it scans your resume and parses it for all the text you have, and it looks for certain keywords that are relevant to the job description. So for example, a programming job that requires a certain language such as Java. And when a recruiter comes, they can actually filter for all the resumes that have that specific keyword listed. So if your resume doesn't have that keyword, for example, you'd be filtered out. Or if your resume didn't parse correctly into that ATS system, you'd be filtered out without anyone taking a look at your resume. This is one of the first major hurdles that people trip up on. So it's really important to make sure you have a resume that scans properly into an ATS system. One of the best ways to know if your resume is getting scanned by an ATS system properly is by using this tool called Resume Worded. Now, Resume Worded is a website that's kind of like a Grammarly for your resume, where when you upload your resume, they'll run it through their own ATS system and they'll tell you whether they were able to scan the resume correctly, and also give you really helpful hints on how you can improve your resume to have better chances when applying in the future. The next thing we want to look at is the actual content of your resume. Now, for a resume, what you have to think is that whoever is reading your resume is super busy. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you craft your resume so that somebody at a glance gets an understanding of the major skills that you have. So how that actually looks is you want to have a resume that's no longer than one page. Now, when you fit everything in one page, you have to be more deliberate about how you use the space. This means you get rid of all the filler text or any long-winded descriptions of some of the roles that you might have had. When you're writing your bullet point, you want to try to show the impact that you had on your previous organization. You don't want to just list out all the responsibilities that you had. And the reason you don't want to do that is because for somebody who doesn't have the context, they won't even know whether your responsibility was an important one or not. But if you can demonstrate that, hey, I improved outcomes for this company 50%, 30%, etc., that is a better metric where they can kind of understand, oh, he was a really good worker and maybe we should give him a shot for an interview. Specifically, the format I try to use when I'm writing out my bullet points is I write them in the following form. I accomplished X measured by Y by doing Z. And the reason that I do them like this is the person can get a really good sense of what was the outcome of what you were doing. Not so much what were you doing day to day, but what is the outcome. And one thing I like to do is I like to bold all the metrics I have on my resume. I want to bold it so that when somebody's scanning through my resume, first thing they see is all the impact and the metrics that I've had. Now, if you're thinking about what to write and you're kind of drawing a blank, one thing I would recommend is try to think about some of the times when you delivered a positive outcome to the company, which might be a monetary outcome, a process outcome that helped improve some of the processes, or maybe you just documented the code that reduced dev time, etc. These are some of the impacts that you should try to really focus on. And what I always do is in the moment, as something happens, I'll actually jot it down so I won't forget when I'm recreating my resume in the future. So that's something I would recommend that you should try to keep in mind and go back and try to figure out, were there any quantitative improvements that I've made in some of the roles that I was a part of? So hopefully with that, you're able to write a really impactful bullet point that helps to draw the reader in. The next thing you want to do is the fine attention to detail parts, which is your formatting consistency. So with your formatting consistency, what you want to do is you want to make sure that all the headers and all the formatting that you have is the same font size, the same font type, etc. And one thing I've noticed that a lot of people miss is that the way that they format dates might be a little bit different. On one job, they might write August and write the full month, and the next job, they might write September, but they'll only abbreviate it to have a shorter version of September. So these are the kind of styling inconsistencies that you'd like to avoid. So if you've written one date one way, make sure that you've written all the dates the same way. And again, same headers, etc. So that's kind of the fine details. Another thing you want to try to keep in mind is you want to send your resume as a PDF. And the reason you want to do this is regardless of what tool you made your resume in, you don't want to have the person on the other end receiving your resume have to worry about whether they can actually open the file or not. Instead, in a PDF, everything opens up very nicely and shows up almost like an image, so they can kind of like look through everything without needing to worry about any other aspects of whether they can open the file or not. And one last final detail I mentioned is that when you're creating your resume and saving it to a file, you should save it with the following format: first name underscore your last name underscore resume .pdf. And the reason you're doing this is you want to make it as easy as possible to know who has the resume come from. And in the case that your resume starts to get emailed around the organization, you want to have an easy way for people to look up your resume again. So you're just trying to make their lives as easy as possible with everything that you're doing. That's kind of some of my top high-level tips for how to create a great resume. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to address them. And if you want more in-depth or detailed description of any of the points I talked about, please let me know and we can make another video. Thanks so much for your time.